One of the most influential institutions in America when it comes to K through 12 education is the Nonpartisan Education Commission of the States. Maybe you haven't heard about it, but the group advises both the federal government and state governments on education policy and also implementation. And the organization recently selected Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson as their next chairman. And he's joining us live. Governor, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on National Report this morning. We appreciate it. And congratulations, by the way, on the position. That's a big deal. I'm curious to know, you've got this platform. The press releases went out. What is your main focus as chairman?
Well, thank you. And I am very excited about this opportunity. The Education Commission of the States has all 50 states. It shares best practices and allows me as chairman to really focus on my passion, which is computer science education. We have really accelerated computer science education in Arkansas. We were the first state to require it to be offered in every high school, and now it's become a national story, but this is a national security interest for our country. Whenever you look at how are we going to have the talent in cybersecurity and software development, in all of the automation that's coming, whether it's manufacturing or whether it's automated vehicles. We have to have the talent here versus importing that talent or our jobs being shipped overseas. And that's why it's a national security issue. As chairman, I'll be promoting this over the next, during my tenure over the next year. Excited about that. We're making great progress in our country. We want to be able to continue that focus.
Some of the, I know your big focus there is computer science, but some of the focus for parents, I'm sure as you know, is this national conversation that many have of what they're calling woke curriculum within the classroom, or policies of gender identity within the classroom, specifically there in elementary schools. We have seen school board members hearing out parents coming into school board meetings that maybe they haven't come to before. Is this important in addressing parents' concerns there in the classroom of school curriculum and what is being taught? Maybe there are some things that parents do not agree with. How do you handle that as chairman?
Well, it is absolutely very important. We want parents to be engaged in education and supporting the children and knowing what's going on in the school. We don't want our public schools to undermine the values that are taught in the home, and particularly if there's matters of faith, we don't want that totally undermined in the public school environment. And parents need to know and they need to be engaged. To me, this has to be handled at the local school board level, and so transparency is important. We've required our local school districts to post what their curriculum is so parents know what is being taught in the classroom. We have a process can be followed if you object to material that's being taught in the classroom that can be brought before the school boards. And so it's handled in that fashion. And I think it's a very serious issue. For example, when you're looking at biological males trying to compete in women's sports, that's something that is a clear differentiator. The state can step in. I signed a law that prohibited that because I want to protect women's sports. And so there's areas that the state can be involved, but primarily this is transparency to parents and making sure that the school boards can handle some of these very sensitive issues with our children.
And when you're talking about students, you're talking about children, and you briefly touched on it. In March of 2021, Arkansas became the first state in the nation to ban irreversible gender transition surgeries on children. The law, though, quickly challenged in court. It was temporarily blocked. This past August, though, the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the injunction against the state's law. So the legality of it will ultimately be decided in federal court this month, a few days from now. I know your Attorney General recently defended the state's law. This in an interview with Jon Stewart. Let me play some of that for you. Here's the clip.
I believe that these parents need to make sure that they're encouraged to get numerous opinions when they're talking about an irreversible step.
You're not letting them. The state's not saying get another opinion. What they're saying is you can't. What you're actually saying is the opposite.
No, that's actually not at all what the state said. The state simply said that you cannot perform these procedures. And so parents should get another opinion.
Your thoughts on that, and also another question, if a parent does want their child to undergo that surgery, the child's physician recommends it or allows it, why does the state argue that perhaps that guidance by the doctor should be, or by the parent should be ignored? Your thoughts?
You know, that's a very important question. You've got to distinguish the process and what's being offered and recommended by doctors. If you're looking at irreversible surgery, transition surgery, then the state has a right to prohibit that. You know, that's irreversible. That's not the best medical practice, and the state can step in and say no to the surgery. Now, the bill went further than that and actually prohibited even the hormonal treatment. And that, to me, is a decision between the parent and the doctor whenever you're looking at the best care for the children and the medical advice. I don't think the state should step in. So, in fact, to me, those are some of the key issues and how you distinguish that. That issue is going to have to be resolved in court. But that bill went too far whenever it prohibited any type of care for those with gender dysphoria. And again, the surgeries are out of line. That should be prohibited, and I would sign that law, but we don't want to take that too far and interfering with that parent-child and physician relationship. We need more science to back that up, and so we'll see how that develops in the court.
We'll continue to follow that. I'll move along now. I'm sure maybe you've heard it already. President Biden recently sat down with CNN. He was asked a range of questions, obviously some of that about the state of the economy, but then he was asked if he would run again in 2024. Here's a clip.
The big question, of course, is when you're going to make an official announcement about whether or not you're going to run for 2024 for re-election. Do you think you'll make a decision before the end of the year?
Well, look, I'm not going to make this about my decision. I'm going to make this about this off-year election. After that's done in November, then I'm going to be in the process of deciding.
Is one of the calculations that you think you're the only one who can beat Donald Trump?
I believe I can beat Donald Trump again.
He goes on to talk about, look at everything that he's done. He talks about the Inflation Reduction Act, job growth, et cetera. Your thoughts when you watch this president, again, making that announcement that if he does run, it wouldn't be announced till after the midterms there, and obviously touting what he sees as successes for his administration. Governor, your thoughts on that?
Well, his best answer was probably that he was going to wait till after the midterm to make a decision. But in terms of his defense of his administration's policy on inflation, on energy, his policies are indefensible. His policies are the reason that Arkansans are paying more at the pump. It's the reason they're having to cut back on their expenditures or to work 2 jobs. The inflationary pressure, and it really goes back to his energy policy that he's tried to pull back on, but it's been ineffective, it's been inconsistent, and it's hurting our Americans. And so I think, you know, that's something that he has to answer for, and I think it's going to be a big impact in the midterm elections. I also, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, I was actually there when I was Homeland Security. I was the first, helped set up the first visa security office in Saudi Arabia, and for America and to protect America. It's a difficult relationship that we have. They went against us when it comes to Russia. They aided Russia, who is we're opposing in the war in Ukraine, and so that has to be reevaluated. But it's a challenge for us as a country because we need them to be more responsive to the United States and a greater part of our security alliance versus tipping their hand to Russia, which they've been doing. So we do have to reassess that relationship.
And the president talked about consequences for Saudi Arabia and Saudi leaders, but stopping short of saying exactly what those consequences would be in that interview there. Governor Asa Hutchinson there of Arkansas joining us live. Governor, it's always good to see you. I appreciate you taking the time for the viewers today. Thank you.